Yeah, before I throw up the PowerPoint deck and everything, I just wanted to say really happy to be here. I was actually really looking forward to attend the conference in person. Things happened, but yeah, just kind of seeing what you guys had going on. I was like, hey, let's do an online thing. So that's kind of when I jumped on board and helped the team out. And so far, it's been a lot of fun. And given how I think we're still, last time I checked, right up still around 700 people watching here 4.5 hours later. I think it was a good move. It was really worth it for everyone, and happy to help organize and now actually present a session as well.
Awesome.
So without further ado, let's bring up PowerPoint. All right, so one little note here, sorry for this, but the session title is a little bit different. So we are talking about a couple different products today. We're talking about Universal Automation, Universal API, and Universal Dashboard. That all fits into a product called PowerShell Universal. So we're going to be talking about that for a little bit, and then we're going to be jumping into demos. And if the floating pizza slice in space is any indication, you can kind of bet that this is going to be, I'd say, kind of like a lighthearted session. We're going to have fun with it. So let's go ahead and jump in. So talking a little bit about myself here, already got the introduction, but thank you. So yes, I'm a product manager at a company called StealthBits, a cybersecurity software company. We build some threat detection and threat response products. And for me, even though, I kind of work for a software company, I still use PowerShell in basically every single day. So whether this is actually building the software, deploying the software, building labs, troubleshooting our software, working with customers, day in and day out, still PowerShell. So even though, I'm not right now in a traditional like IT admin type role, it's still part of my daily life. And it has been for a while, actually, for my whole really career. Talking about my PowerShell experience, I started out as kind of like a workstation team IT guy doing software patches, moved into systems management and automation. And really, I started out at an accounting company where we did a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And probably the biggest time saver, the biggest kind of breakthrough for me and kind of my learning path with PowerShell was whenever this accounting company would buy another accounting company, what would happen is we basically have to create file shares with a long list of client names. And for each client in their own folders, they need every single year that they had tax records for. So you can imagine when mid-sized company buys out a mom and pop accounting company in Ohio somewhere, they need to stand up a file server and then populate thousands and thousands and thousands of folders with subfolders. For a long time, this was all done manually. So pay some admins, start at 5 o'clock on a Friday and work until the end of the night on Sunday, just right-clicking, new folder, name of client, year, done. So when I turned up at that company and built a PowerShell script that basically could copy the file paths from one folder on a server to another, you can say that kind of hit home with a lot of people. And from there, after I kind of learned the power of PowerShell, I just kept working with it, moved into consulting, did that for a good 4 years, doing a lot of stuff with the System Center stack, Configuration Manager, and Orchestrator and Azure specifically. And now I've kind of actually, for the last 2 years, moved into a product manager role. But even though I'm a product manager at a software company in cybersecurity, every single day I have Visual Studio Code open and I'm doing PowerShell nonstop. So you can go ahead and I put some of my Twitter links and bios on here and all that. I often make a lot of kind of funny, weird projects with PowerShell that I put up on my GitHub or Twitter. Not super frequent poster on Twitter, but there's occasionally some, moderately good content there, I would say. So let's go ahead and move on to what we're actually going to be talking about in the session today. So again, we're talking about PowerShell Universal. And we're going to talk about what that is, and then we're just going to move right into building something cool with it. So I was really impressed by all the sessions so far today this morning, covering a lot of, I would almost call them like core PowerShell topics, like how to build functions, how to build modules, lots of good stuff. This is really more of, hey, here is a cool thing that you can do with your PowerShell knowledge. So we're talking about PowerShell Universal. It was built by this dude over here, Adam Driscoll. He has his own company called Iron Man Software. And you might have heard and you might have seen in the ads that we've been playing the Universal Dashboard product, Universal API, and some of the other things he's done. And recently what's kind of happened is all of that stuff basically got combined together into one product called PowerShell Universal, which is more or less like a platform for all that stuff. And I've been playing around with, I think, Universal Dashboard for maybe about 2 years now. Have a lot of fun with it. It's pretty interesting. But to me, this whole platform with all the components talking together is kind of taking it to the next step. And that's why I wanted to show that off today, just to give everyone an idea of some of the things that, can be done with it, basically. Now, I, for a while, thought about how I would kind of describe this, because there's a lot to it. But what I want to do is just give a very brief overview and then build something with it, and we'll kind of go from there. So when we're talking about PowerShell Universal, to me, it's dashboards in the form of Universal Dashboard, where using PowerShell, you just write PowerShell and that outputs as a dashboard. It's Universal API, where just like in dashboards, you write PowerShell and then you turn that into a API, a REST API. And finally, automation, which is really more or less like, I like to think of it as a Windows task scheduler replacement, but built from the ground up for PowerShell. So, hey, I have a script. I need to run it on a schedule. This shouldn't be that hard, right? Should be easy. And I want to do all these things in a very PowerShell-y way. Like, I don't want to have to learn some kind of crazy YAML syntax to schedule a script. I would just like to be able to say new script schedule and be done with it. And that's kind of, to me, what PowerShell Universal is. So when we're talking about PowerShell Universal in this session, that's really what we're looking at here. I would like to take just a second now, just so that we're all on the same page, to do one of my favorite techniques here called demo by screenshot. So we're just going to the Iron Man Software website, and we can see, we'll be going into this in a demo shortly, but we have, this product has basically a GUI where you can set up all the scripts, set up your jobs, your schedules, the APIs, the dashboards, all these things I've talked about using the GUI. On the back end, though, it's sequenced with APIs, and you can do this all with PowerShell too. So the GUI and the components are nice from a management perspective, seeing what's running, seeing what's scheduled. But the traditional kind of admin side is really more for the PowerShell admin, and of course it's fully supported. So what we're going to do is we're going to be working our way through PowerShell Universal in this session to actually build a couple of things, because I felt like that would be the best way to kind of give people an idea of what PowerShell Universal is. So again, I just talked a little bit about the website there, and I am going to take a little bit of a segue here and actually show you the demo site. And by the way, this URL actually might be like a preview. It might actually be completely secret. So if I spilled the beans, sorry about that. But we're on Twitch. It's all good. And basically, if we look at demo.ironmansoftware.com, all this is Universal Dashboard. So I know we had a couple questions in chat today about it, so I want to just take a little segue to show what this is. So if we look at this is kind of like it's a demo website. It's kind of boilerplate site with a number of various controls. We have buttons, we have layouts, we have, try and pick a good one here. I have radio buttons and things like that. And this is basically built with React controls and Material UI. But the magic here is just the fact that I can generate this dashboard and all of these components using PowerShell. So I can surface, basically these rich React web dashboard components just using PowerShell. I don't actually have to be a web developer. If I am, I can sprinkle a little bit of that knowledge in. But there's a lot of UI and forms that we can build with this tool. And probably my favorite thing is everything's kind of variablized. So if I have a text box, I can type values into a text box and I can pull that value out using PowerShell. So it's well enough that I can build a traditional dashboard, but we can process the inputs and the outputs of that to do things with it. So it's actually a really, I would say, a really good tool building as well. I think, we've heard folks like Don Jones say for years that, hey, we need to be tool makers. And that's kind of why I've gravitated towards using Universal Dashboard and PowerShell Universal, because it really, for me, it enables that. And I have a lot of fun building things with it. So here's my awesome vertical integration buzzword slide. But again, the idea here is that with dashboards, we can build friendly interfaces for our end users. In previous iterations of Universal Dashboard, you could do that, but if you wanted to build a tool with it, you basically have to go and mix your script, your actual processing, your notifications, your data handling in with your dashboard script. And technically that's fine, it works, but actually having the solution like PowerShell Universal, you could offload some of that work to APIs. So you could have a very simple dashboard that is just focused on showing information to the user, and all the heavy lifting or data retrieval methods can be put into an API. Likewise, if, for example, I have a request submission process that I've built into a dashboard, and I want to process my requests that were submitted every hour or 15 minutes, I can use Universal Automation side to actually go and process those on a schedule, utilize variables and secrets that I have stored on my automation server, so I don't have to embed all of that in my GUI. So I think at this point, we've talked about PowerShell Universal a lot. We've talked about Universal this, that, and the other thing. So let's actually build something with it to show off what this thing actually is. And as I was coming up with kind of an idea for a demo for this session, I figured, I should probably build like an Active Directory dashboard or Azure VM provisioning or resource analysis or server monitoring. And I think people would get a lot of value out of that, and it'd be very relatable to their day jobs. But yeah, I think we're going to build a dashboard and a series of tooling for ordering pizza instead, because that's what everyone wants to see, I think. But the important thing here is that we're going to show the process. We're going to show what you can do with it. And I think this will kind of get the creative juices flowing a little bit. In the central US time zone, it's also right around the lunch hour. I've been looking at this slide all week and I'm starving for pizza. Anyways, here's what we're going to do. We're going to use Universal Dashboard to actually build an end user pizza ordering, like a fake kind of pizza ordering thing where an end user could visit and they can customize what toppings they want, just like when you go and order a pizza online. Let's do something like that in Universal Dashboard. We're also going to expose some APIs that basically act as the inventory service. So, hey, how many breadsticks do we have in stock, right? Or what type, are we out of any toppings, things like that. And finally, for the actual processing of the orders, we're going to use Universal Automation because that's a good use of kind of like a scheduled script execution engine. Oh, and by the way, Cross Inc. in the chat, you're not getting pizza from me, sorry. So this is my slide with all the memes and the GIFs on it. So I wanted to make sure I got this out of the way early. But pretty much the rest of the session, we're just going to kind of have fun. We're going to build something, and I hope it kind of gives you an idea of some of the cool things that we can actually do with this. Why not tacos? So this is the Chicago PowerShell conference, right? Not the somewhere else conference. Anyways, let's go ahead and switch it over into demo mode. So if you bear with me here, I'm just going to bring up my resources. So first off, I happen to have PowerShell Universal running. I'm running basically everything right on my local machine in this case. So I've gone ahead and I've downloaded PowerShell Universal. I've installed it on my local host for testing purposes. And I have a couple things going on, but first what we're going to do is go into our dashboard sections. And I have two dashboards running. So first what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the very basic PSConf pizza dashboard that I made to give everyone an idea of what we're looking at. So this is a relatively basic example here where I can see I have some options at the top. We call this a stepper. I can pick a crust. I can pick what sauce I want. We'll stick with marinara. The size, the toppings and things like that. And then I can go all the way through, and at the very end, it just dumps a PowerShell object from all of my choices. So again, this is just to show you a very basic dashboard, and we're going to iterate a bit on this. But in order for me to actually build this, I can pull up Visual Studio Code and show you what we have going on here. So not the most complex script in the world, honestly, not too much going on here. You can see that basically the stepper at the top, that whole like wizard type interface is facilitated via this new UD stepper control. And let me go into full screen for you guys so you can see that a little better. Each step is defined with the new UD step, and then we have these UD element and select controls, which actually build those controls on the front end. So even though I'm exposing a React web-based control to the end user, I really don't need to do anything too fancy here. I have an element with an ID of crust, and it has these options here. And then basically I can call this ID later on in my script and basically embed it into a PowerShell object. So it's very easy for me to expose elements. The idea here is that if I know PowerShell, I can go and read the docs and read the reference material on these visual elements and put together a dashboard pretty quickly. So what we're actually going to do next is we're going to iterate on this a bit, like I said. So I also have an advanced pizza dashboard. So let's take a look at that. There's a couple more things going on here. So first off, when this dashboard loads, it has a little bit more of visual styling on it. And there's a couple other things going on. So the dashboard I showed you before was completely static. We basically hard code all the options, all the choices, all the things like that. But I can see here, we have a few ways of building on this. So when this dashboard loads, it actually hits an API that will load pizza inventory. So I can see here, this is actually just a JSON file. It's filling in as a database where, you know what, today, sorry, we're out of the pan style, we're out of deep dish, we're out of thin crust. We only have original. So me as a user, if I go back to the page, I can see, oh, okay, we only have original. And you know what, this is the Chicago PowerShell conference. So let's just bring back our deep dish style crust. I know deep dish is probably technically more than just crust, but yeah, it's a demo, guys. So anyways, we can see here, now that I've gone ahead, I've refreshed the dashboard, the data loads dynamically on load. I'll show you how we facilitated that. Also, if we just go through the steppers, actually each drop-down option is populated from that database file utilizing an API. And so we can go through and pick a pizza here. Honestly, I'm going to do my personal favorite. I know this is a little bit of controversy here, but I am a Canadian bacon pineapple guy. We can have some QA in the chat on that later if we want, but we're going to go ahead and keep moving through. I can see again, because all of these objects, all of the choices are being stored in PowerShell objects, I can very easily display this to the user after the case. And what I'm actually going to do now, I'm just going to split screen this for you real quick here. I have a myOrder.json open because when I click finish, I'm actually going to go and hit an order submission API that will take that PowerShell object, convert it into JSON, throw it over to a pizza submission API so that when I click finish, it actually goes and stores my order with all my choices into JSON. And now we can do a couple things from here. So I did mention APIs quite a bit there. If I go to the APIs page in PowerShell Universal, I can see I have my get pizza inventory API. And this one is not complex at all, but this API is basically you define the entire function, the whole process of the API itself with a PowerShell script. And then, so this here is just a simple get method API. So standard west reb get request. And really all it's doing for the purposes of this demo is just hitting my local just local box, and it's reading a JSON file. This, again, it's standing in as my database. We convert that file from JSON, and we actually, I actually do a double convert, which is a little funny, but then at the end of the day, like a standard web-based API, it can take JSON in and it can do JSON out. So in this case, my dashboard can hit this API, and then it gets JSON back, even though it just executed PowerShell on the back end. And then I can do things with that. So again, I can take some of that processing logic out of my dashboard. These APIs also, by the way, we can build post requests, so I can send basically objects in as well to do some more processing as well. But for now, we're just really sticking with and talking about the get there. So the next step of the process is we've displayed a dashboard to an end user, and they submitted an order. The inventory was all applied. We have a proper order. Everything's good and ready to go. But now what we actually need to do is process that order. So for the purposes of demonstration, this would normally be like an ad hoc execution or a triggering process or something that runs on a schedule. But in this case, I actually have a PowerShell script called process pizza order that when this script runs, it's going to go ahead and look at that order that I submitted and process it. So again, this would normally be something that would be running automatically. But again, we can see this is just a PowerShell script. I'm reading the JSON. I'm reading some of the fields in it. What we're going to actually do is in the place of notifications and things like that, what we're actually going to do is send some messages to Slack as we kind of step through the workflow of a pizza. As funny as that sounds. And basically, one of the nice features about using PowerShell Universal is that we can actually use standard PowerShell commands like read host to actually prompt the administrator in the UI to take an action. And that's kind of how we're going to manage the workflow of cooking and delivering a pizza. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I just have to get my fancy Slack, demo Slack up here. So what we're going to do is, in this case, I'm just going to run the script. This is all running in PowerShell 7, by the way. You can customize execution options and what credential it runs on and all that, but we're keeping it simple. This is kind of a high-level session today. And we're going to go ahead and run this. And I can see in the Slack channel now, it says, hey, a new pizza order has been placed. I'm just, again, taking information that I've gathered from that order object and just throwing it up into Slack. I added a button here in Slack. And basically what this does is now I'm looking at the job execution. So PowerShell Universal, using Universal Automation, has run the script, and I hit that first read host. And now I can say that this script, this job, is actually waiting for feedback. When something is waiting for feedback, which again, we're just interpreting the standard read host, I can go ahead, if we actually have a UI exposed for this. This can also be done programmatically via script as well, but I'm just gonna say here, in this case, I've customized a prompt, and I'm gonna say, yep, it's being prepped. If I go back to my little Slack example here, sometimes Slack webhooks can delay for a couple seconds, but what we should see momentarily here, if the demo's happy, maybe. That's a new one, invalid blocks. All right. Well, what we expected to see was just a little message here, but we're going to keep moving. So we're in prep. And then again, so for each step, I just have a read host that's asking me to prompt feedback for the script, just saying, hey, when is it being prepped? When is it being cooked? Just so that it's that kind of standard pizza ordering system where we just show the state. So let's see. Invalid blocks. This is a new one, everyone. I have not seen this one before, but we'll keep on running through. The nice thing is, let's just keep going here. I did run through this demo a few times, so I can kind of just show you what these blocks should have looked like. Very odd. And then, so this is kind of what we expect to see. And that, again, nothing too special. These are just Slack notifications, but because I can control and take actions on the state of my order based on the PowerShell script that I've written, you know, I can actually go through and do things with that. So again, apologize. I'm not sure why I'm getting invalid blocks from Slack now. Maybe I submitted way too much stuff to my Slack webhook over the last couple of days. But again, just know that we can do things. We can process that end user input in a number of ways with PowerShell scripts, and we can kind of mix together APIs and scripts for longer running tasks, and we can do a lot of interesting things. So Frank asked me to put this guy in the slide. So worst pizza API ever. You know what? That's fine. It was just a demo. And just kind of to reiterate our demo flow here, we have the dashboard. And again, this was supposed to be fun. We're kind of in lunch. People are probably getting hungry. A lot of people are probably grabbing lunch right now and things like that. But we did this whole pizza ordering thing. You can easily translate this into your own type of system, right? So if you need a workstation request, new user provisioning, Azure resource, or whatever, just because I'm doing stuff with pizza doesn't mean you have to worry about some goofy demo like that either. So we have a demo that an end user can visit. They can submit orders. You can build tooling in it. You can also just display information in a dashboard. That dashboard is very easy to interact with an API as well. Again, the dashboard, as we move through it, we can be sending data back and forth, running standard PowerShell commands. Again, there's really the only thing about Universal Dashboard is I have some commandlets to put stuff on a dashboard, but those things also return objects that we can interact using standard PowerShell. So if you know your way around PowerShell, you can build some pretty cool dashboards and APIs. And then finally, once we've kind of assembled and put all this stuff together, I can go and submit and actually process that information using universal automation to execute those long-running tasks that may or may not have state and other things like that. By the way, I do believe that Adam Driscoll, the person who built this, is in chat. So you guys might have been hitting him up for questions. But if you have questions about any of these components, he's in there and he can answer them a lot better than I probably can. So I do want to take a minute here to talk about how to get it. So ironmansoftware.com/downloads. You know what? Just for the heck of it, I'm going to load that up. There's actually many different, and sorry for the puns, flavors of downloads for PowerShell Universal. So there's good old-fashioned MSI. You can also do a zip if you want to host it yourself in, like IIS or any other web server. It is all built on .NET Core from the start, so you can run it on Linux. It runs great in a Docker container. I don't know what kind of wizardry goes into it, but I would say it runs better on Linux than it does on Windows. That might just be a web server hosting thing, but in my experience, it runs really fast in Linux and Docker. And just, I think a couple days ago, they added a chocolatey package as well. So for all the stuff I just showed you, you can do a one-liner in chocolatey and then browse to localhost 5000 and you have an automation scripting engine, APIs, and dashboards there ready to go. PowerShell Universal is not free. There is a free tier, but there are restrictions, like you can only run a certain number of jobs per day. You can only run a certain number of dashboards at a time, and I think there's some rate limiting in the APIs as well. But there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with this, so I think it's well worth playing around with it. And even if you just want to build something for fun or build a simple tool for personal use, it's totally a viable option. It's on the Docker Hub as well. I know I mentioned Docker, but there's official Docker images for Windows, Linux, and Windows, if I remember correctly, as of this week. But, I'd follow Adam. He's kind of the one-man show over there at Iron Man for more information. There's an awesome community in the forums. There's a lot of people building extensions for this and things like that out there. And the docs are continuously updated. So in this demo, I actually showed the new version of Universal Dashboard, version 3. I've never used it before. It's a little bit different than the previous versions, but I just went to the docs and copy pasted a handful of examples and just put my own script in. And I was kind of basically off and running.